Christmas Island is only around 135 square kilometers and was named after the day of its discovery, December 25, 1643, by Captain William Miners of the Royal Mary. Christmas Island was formed by a series of geological uplifts. The structure of the island is comparable to a wedding cake, with a central plateau at 200 meters above sea level and a number of cliffs and terraces descending to a rugged shoreline with few beaches. 63% of the island is a protected Australian national park. The park offers the perfect forest ecosystem for the Christmas Island red crab, which is endemic to the Cocos Islands and Christmas Island, both in the Indian Ocean. They try to keep a low profile under the forest canopy most of the year.
The annual Christmas Island crab migration is legendary. Each rainy season, these crustaceans leave their inland burrows and head to the sea to spawn.
What makes this migration legendary is that the red crab is the most abundant of the 14 species of land crabs on the island, with an estimated 120 million inhabitants. They will have to cross treacherous terrain, traffic, the risk of dehydration, and the rocky, battered shores. The males lead the way and are joined by the females, but they won't mate until they reach the breeding terraces by the shoreline. Some of the red crabs inhabit the interior of the island forest and have a marathon of a journey ahead of them. Most of the year, the red crabs live in their burrows inland. The deep soil of the tall rainforest provides for adequate moisture retention, which is vital to the crab's survival. The burrows consist of a single entrance tunnel leading down to a chamber. Living solitary lives, each burrow houses only one crab, as they will fight off any intruders. They use their powerful claws to excavate these burrows. Their caverns protect them from the intense tropical sun, while they provide an essential service to the forest by recycling nutrients and aerating the soil. Almost every square meter of the forest floor has a crab living underneath. They mostly feed off the abundant vegetation, but they will also dine on snails, birds, and even other crabs if necessary. The Christmas Island red crabs are not the only crabs on the island. There are 14 species of land crabs and 160 more around the island waters. The red crabs are a decent size. Their shell can measure up to 12 centimeters. It is a rounded shell that encloses their lungs and gills. They mature and reach full size in 3 to 4 years and can live over 10 years. Crabs are members of the arthropod family, the same as insects and spiders. They have an exoskeleton and jointed limbs. Most crab legs are designed to move up and down rather than forwards, which is why they often walk sideways. Although most crabs are associated with water, the Christmas Island red crab and their close neighbors, the robber crabs, would both drown if submerged for too long.
This is a robber crab. This one's huge. They're the biggest land crab in the world. They're freaky looking things. They've got 2 antennae, feelers at the top there, and another 2 underneath, which are bent, almost looks like cricket's legs, just waving around there in front.
They have an excellent sense of smell, which is enhanced by these antennae. Christmas Island is home to the largest robber crab population in the world. This enormous crab is also called the coconut crab. Its nickname, the robber crab, was inherited because it has an unusual attraction to shiny objects and has been known to sneak into houses and tents to steal pots and pans and silverware. The incredible strength of their claws also allows them to crack and peel coconuts to eat, hence the name, the coconut crab. They can grow up to 1 meter in length and weigh almost 4.5 kilograms or 10 pounds. Although it's a relative of the hermit crab, only the young robber crabs take refuge under a shell. Sometimes they will even use a broken coconut shell. As they mature, they develop a harder shell on their abdomen and no longer require a shell for protection. They are similar to the red crabs in their diets, as they primarily eat fruits and leaves, but will also eat other carrion, and sometimes they will even feast on their red crab neighbors and their shells, possibly for calcium. Usually nocturnal, it is not uncommon to find them scavenging for food any time of the day because of the high numbers of crabs, creating a very competitive environment. But that doesn't stop the red crabs when they decide to begin their migration to the sea. The breeding sequence is linked to the phases of the moon, so that eggs may be released by the female red crabs into the sea precisely at the turn of the high tide during the last quarter of the moon. At this time, there is the least difference between high and low tides. Some of the red crabs that inhabit the island forests have to travel over 2 kilometers, and there are many dangers ahead of them. The endemic Maclear's rat might have helped control red crab populations on the island in the past, but now it is extinct. However, in recent years, an invasive species, the yellow crazy ant, accidentally introduced to Christmas Island, has been responsible for killing millions of red crabs. Despite the few predators that endanger the red crabs, nature plays a big part in their survival. Although they don't live in water, they still require a certain level of moisture. The rainy season usually lasts from December to April. Without the rainy season, they risk dehydration if they try to migrate to the rocky shores. In addition, their burrows are designed for moisture retention. They use leaves to plug their entrances to trap humidity. On their migration, they can be out in the sun for days, and that's why the rains are so important. In past years, when the rains did not come, the crabs did not attempt the journey. This time around, the rains are on time, and the marching begins. Once they do make a move, they do their best to find the shortest route with maximum shade and protection from the sun. Unfortunately, these routes inevitably cross paths with humans. The local residents have an affinity to the crabs. Unfortunately, some of the migratory routes come through the towns and across roads, making it very difficult for people to avoid them altogether. With this many obstacles, the locals had to find a way to keep the crabs out of harm's way, or they risked devastating the red crab population. To round up and divert millions of crustaceans, they started by putting up a fence. This length of fence is 1.5 kilometers long and has been put in to keep the crabs from getting into the residential area. The fence corrals them along the side of the road for about 200 meters, where the road is blocked off for them to cross safely.
This is exactly the reason why this fence is in place on this road. It's these big heavy vehicles that aren't able to turn and swerve around the crabs. It's a huge danger for them.
The fences lead the masses of crabs to passageways built under the roads. Instead of wandering across the busy highways, they have their own tunnels.
These tunnels have been put in underneath the roads on Christmas Island so the crabs can move safely across the road without the threat of being hit by a vehicle. And they're safe in here, away from them up there.
When the crab traffic gets too thick, they are left with no other option than to close the roads. The locals don't mind. It's a small town, and they try to respect the crab migration.
Now, this is a male, and he's got one of his claws much smaller than the other. Now, he's probably been fighting with another male, lost this claw at some stage, and this is a new grown claw which will eventually get back to full size. Now, this small one probably doesn't give too much of a nasty nip at the moment, but once they get up to this size, they're pretty powerful.
Handicapped or not, their persistence to perpetuate their species is remarkable. This is about the halfway point in their journey. They've made it through the middle of town and past dangerous roads to the edge of the shoreline cliffs. Their final destination is almost in sight, but the event is not over. This is their final hurdle. Just off the road where the crabs were crossing is a steep ridge that they must descend nearly 500 meters. Then they will finally be steps away from the coastline. Once they make it, they will get close enough to rehydrate. Then climb back up the rocks and dig temporary burrows. Some of the crabs have found an easy way to get much-needed moisture. The rocks have formed blowholes. As the waves crash against them, the crabs are exposed to a constant fine mist, perfect for rehydrating without having to be submerged. The males will then continue back to the forest terraces just above the coastline to get to work on their temporary burrows. Here, there are about 2 crabs per square meter of land, which results in a lot of fighting as they battle it out for space for their burrows. They will fight to the death to protect their territory and mate. The crabs continue to arrive at the coasts for days. After mating, the males will return to their original forest homes, while the females will remain for several weeks to spawn. The female releases the eggs into the ocean, and they hatch immediately on contact with the water. Waves and tides push and pull the clouds of larvae in all directions. A large percentage of their offspring will not survive. Sea conditions and ocean predators such as manta rays and huge whale sharks will affect the chances that the larvae will survive. After about 30 days in the ocean and several larval stages, they develop into prawn-like animals called megalopae. These megalopae spend 1 to 2 days in tidal pools close to the shore before changing into young crabs and leaving the water. The thumbnail-sized crabs then spend the next week making their way to the island's forest plateau. It only takes 2 successful years in 10 to keep their populations healthy. To better understand the life cycle of these crabs and others like them, marine biologists monitor them closely. A career in the field of marine biology can span across a wide variety of species and environments. This career field offers an immense number of exciting and rewarding opportunities, as there is much to be discovered about our vast oceans and marine life. Given weather variables, obstacles, and dangers, the Christmas Island red crabs have thrived in the face of adversity. Their determination to survive and the local support from human neighbors has made this one of the most fascinating events in nature.